Yes, I can see it.
See everything? Okay, excellent. Hello there, everybody. I would say heroes and anti-heroes and villains alike. Um, Happy International Women's Day. My name is Jessica Janiuk. I'm a senior software engineer at Google on the Angular Framework team, and you may know me from such films and publications as Imposter Syndrome, a heckin' thick case study. Wonder Woman goes to Google. Puns and other ways to make your audience love-hate you. And Cooking with Swords, how to keep all your limbs. Available soon wherever fake books are sold. Yeah. So this is your one and only pun warning. I do have quite a reputation for puns, so sorry, not sorry. Captive audience, maybe? I don't know. And important things to note, while I work for Google, I don't speak for Google. My words are my own. So just keep that in mind. So today we're going to be talking about how to inspire your inner imposter syndrome to success, essentially how to take your career to the next level, and maybe you use imposter syndrome along the way. Nothing in this talk really applies specifically to tech. You can really use this in whatever career you're in. It's just, it's going to talk a lot about a philosophy that I've used throughout my career. And if you're unfamiliar with this image that's being shown below of this like spinning objects, I thought this is a really appropriate image to show. So there's a Dr. Nergis Mavalvala. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce her name. And she led the team that was responsible for discovering the first detection of gravitational waves at LIGO, which is a facility that is very sensitive for detecting, specifically built for detecting gravitational waves. And I just thought, we're going to be talking about waves during this, and also it might, lend a little gravity to this talk. So it's just a really cool subject matter as well. So if you haven't checked out any of the information about the gravitational wave detection, please do. It's awesome, and the woman who was responsible for this is just really impressive and phenomenal. So, like people often ask me how I got to where I am now, or like senior engineer, or what that means. I can tell you that I've been a senior engineer for quite a while at this point. I've been in engineering for over a decade, and I'm older than I look. So people often assume that because I'm younger, I somehow like quickly got to senior, but rest assured I did not. It took a lot of effort. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I got here and a little bit of the background of what my engineering career looked like, to kind of give you a sense of like the types of roles and the path that my career took, and hopefully that will give you some perspective on what that means for moving up in your career, and a little bit of perspective on how imposter syndrome will play into this as we get later into the talk. So back in 2007, I started my career not in tech at all. I was working as a video producer for a small paid advertising company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I'm originally from, that part of the country. And that was my original career path. Goal was to work in video. And while I had a minor in what was considered, I think, like a web development minor, I really didn't have much of a solid education in software engineering. But this was a period in time when the internet was still fairly fresh and companies weren't so fond of people using the internet while they were working. And I was just so efficient at my work that I was running out of time or running out of work to do to fill my time, and decided to just play around working with some software that we had. And that was to kind of avoid getting yelled at for like browsing the internet. But I ended up discovering that I really enjoyed it, and decided to pivot my career after about 2 years at this role. So I moved over to just like a very entry level, very green engineer, joining this tiny engineering agency in Western Wisconsin, where they were building websites for small companies in the region. I was using an old, I don't even know if it's still around. I haven't looked into it, but the programming language was Cold Fusion, which used to be created by Macromedia, the people who created Flash, before it was acquired by Adobe. And then Adobe was releasing Cold Fusion for a while. I haven't looked at it since I worked at this company, but that was the language that they used. And through this, I kind of built up some of my chops and what I could do. I also learned that I don't really like Cold Fusion as a language. And I decided to accept a job offer from one of the clients. I essentially got poached over to a manufacturing company, which was technically my first senior role, but it's hard to say it was really senior when there's a team of 2 people. So I was an e-commerce engineer at an automotive aftermarket manufacturing company. So we were really just a tiny, tiny part of this big manufacturing company, and they weren't really thinking much in terms of like technology. So I did a lot of learning here, though. We were doing .NET, and we eventually moved over to doing a lot of Go engineering there. And I really started to learn what my capacity was with learning tech, really, at this role, because I was very self-driven. It was really before I learned anything about agile processes. And then in 2013, I moved to a different company, which was also not what you would really consider a tech company, but it was very strongly driven by tech. It dealt in rewards and recognition programs. And I came in as just a regular old software engineer, and then they quickly discovered my UX skills. And I kind of very quickly raised into the ranks, and then they created this role for me of UX architect, where I was kind of designing the user experience for all of the applications that this company had. And it was at this point of my career that I started getting a lot of recruiter messages that seemed to be ubiquitous in the tech world. And I got one from Facebook, and I was like, why would Facebook want to interview me? I'm just this weird low-level coder, as I said in that video. And I encountered CodeSignal during this time, and started learning really where I fell in the skill level. And through this process, I ended up taking a job that would be considered my first job in the tech sector, where tech is the only thing that they deliver. And I put tech in quotes because a lot of people work at companies that have tech in their title, and some work at companies like I worked at leading up into this point in my career that don't have tech in their companies, but they're all tech. And in fact, a lot of those companies do exceptional engineering work with really great processes. And I think my experience joining a tech company really opened my eyes to what I had been doing before and how good it was. So if you are like thinking about like big tech as like where all of the really smart, accomplished, good engineers go, they're all the same. We're all the same. You're doing great work, even at a company where tech is not in the title. Anyway, so I joined this company as a lead front-end engineer, but found that it wasn't a good fit for me and ended up moving over to a startup. And spoiler alert, I was the lead engineer at a company called Spoiler Alert. So it's a great place to work. And I know they're hiring too. So if you're interested, they work in food waste reduction. It's a really great way to use tech skills to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a great place, great people. And it's kind of here where I guess things blossomed for me. I really kind of grew into this whole kind of lead role and learning what that means. But it wasn't really senior engineer, it was lead engineer. It was like hard, titles are weird. And then in 2019, I joined Google, and I joined as a senior engineer at Google, which is something I never expected would happen. Side note, while I was at Spoiler Alert, I actually ran a GDG myself. So I used to run GDG Cambridge in the Boston area, and I've been a part of Women Tech Makers for like a decade at this point. So it's an awesome program and really great people involved in it. But looking back at this career, you'll notice how many of these roles say senior, how many say lead, some of them say architect, some of them are just SWEs. Like sometimes you can look back at your career and you can just see like the journey may look like it's up and down, and different companies look at these roles differently and the responsibilities are different. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's say you want to be a senior engineer, or replace senior. You just want to like move up. You want to move to the next level, and you're finding yourself going, what do I want to do with this? Like, how do I get there? There's a few questions you can ask yourself. And it's important to note that these are questions only you can answer. I'm not asking you to like type in chat answers to these questions. I mean, you can, but you don't have to. So the first one is like, what does senior or whatever level you're trying to move to mean to the companies that you're working for? This question really gets at like, what is the leveling system? And what are the responsibilities of that next level that you're trying to get to, or that title you're kind of looking for, wherever it may be? All those jobs were different in my job history. Like senior engineer at the first job with 2 people clearly is not the same as senior engineer at Google. So it's really helpful to understand what that role means where you're working. An example of this would be like if you head over to levels.fyi, it's a website, you can actually see how like the big name tech companies, how they do all of their leveling and like where the titles fall, and each of them are different. So it's something that you should be aware of when you're thinking about moving to whatever next level you're moving to. And next is you got to think about what that level means to you specifically. So like, why are you seeking that promotion? Why are you seeking a specific title? Is it prestige? Like, are you looking for like, ooh, I have this name in my title that I can tell people I have? Is it recognition for like a bunch of hard work that you've done over the past few years and you're really just feeling like you're not being recognized? Is it that pay raise, that sweet pay raise you're looking for? All of these things are perfectly valid, but you just need to be aware of it, because it's entirely possible some of those things can be met with like a company shift and not even shifting titles. So if you're looking for like a pay raise, you could just find a job at a different company and you'll get that pay raise. Or if you're looking for recognition, it might be that there's a different role you're seeking or a different team that you're seeking will fit that for you. So just things to be aware of. Number 3 is, are you even in the right place right now? So what I mean by this is like, what does your team look like? Are you being supported by your team? Or are you finding that maybe your team is kind of toxic and you'd rather not be on this team? Is that why you're seeking the promotion? So you can maybe help reshape the team or something like that. Do you have a manager that supports you, or do you feel like maybe that manager is kind of keeping you from achieving your goals? Is the company the kind of company that you really feel like you want to continue working for? Are they a supportive company for you? Um, and like, is it even possible to move up where you are? For example, you might be looking at like you're an engineer on the team and you look and there's only limited spaces for like people to get promoted. So you're kind of hitting a ceiling at the company you're at. And that's going to increase the challenge of trying to get that promotion. So side note here, like if you are in one of those positions where it's kind of toxic, just know that no job is worth your health and well-being. And please consider other alternatives. Like it is not worth burnout, exhaustion. Like your physical health and well-being is important. And if you're in this situation, maybe consider a different role at a different company so that you can get into a better working environment. No one should have to deal with that. So, question number 4 is, what do you even want in your career? So, do you want to be a kick-ass independent contributor where you're doing some really solid coding and you really like digging into that code? Do you want to design projects from scratch where you're going out and doing the research and you're writing design documents and like scoping out something, presenting it, and getting buy-in? Do you want to manage people? Some of the roles at some companies, like senior or whatever next level you're looking at, might involve that. And if that's not something you're interested in, maybe it's not the role you want. Also, do you like meetings? Because let me tell you, as levels go up, you spend a lot more time in meetings and less time getting to do things like coding. And these are things, this is an important thing to think about, because what you may find is that while you're looking for that next level role, you may not even like that role because it's possibly a different job. That is certainly the case at several of the companies I've been in, where the job at the next level up is a different job entirely. So understanding that will help you understand what you want to do next. Okay, so I mentioned at the start of this that we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. So let's talk about imposter syndrome. I'm going to talk about a concept that I'm going to refer to as the imposter wave. And what does that mean? So this is a great way to think about, at least this has been my experience, but hopefully it'll be relevant to you. I think it's an experience that's fairly common. So what does the imposter wave mean? So you can think of an imposter syndrome, the experience of imposter syndrome, as like the sine wave of where you're having peaks and troughs. And in the troughs, you're feeling like imposter syndrome, and at the peaks, you're feeling super confident. This image is actually taken from the link that is here below. This is when I was putting together this talk, I found this blog that actually really is a great example of how I also feel. Like it's clearly somebody else has had a similar thought to me. So definitely check it out. It's a great quick read as well. So when thinking about imposter syndrome as a sine wave, you can really think of them as confidence intervals. And I say this with 95% confidence. Statistics puns. Yeah. Anyway, another way you can think of this as, how often am I comfortable? And really, what do I mean by comfortable? So when I say comfortable, I think of it as this kind of inverse correlational sine wave. So looking at comfort versus feelings of imposter syndrome, when you're feeling your peak levels of comfort, you're feeling your minimum levels of imposter syndrome, and vice versa. Peak imposter syndrome means you're feeling super uncomfortable. So this is really kind of like an imposter syndrome double helix, but please don't think that it's in your DNA. It's not. This is just a visualization. When you're faced with imposter syndrome, then you have two choices that you can make in that like place of discomfort and peak imposter. You can either A, you can let that feeling of imposter syndrome control you. So, you can get super anxious and like really lose sleep over it, which I wouldn't recommend. I've done that many times. It's not pleasant. Or two, you can use this as a tool. And you're probably like, what? Jess, what do you mean use this as a tool? I am super confused. I don't know what you mean. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what does discomfort mean in terms of imposter syndrome? So feeling uncomfortable can be used as a signal. You can think of it as, I'm feeling discomfort because I feel like I don't know something, or there's an area where maybe there's something I need to use for growth, or there's an area I would like to learn something in. I've got this really amazing colleague that knows a ton of things, and they seem to know everything. And when I'm in a meeting with them, I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm just going to nod. And they're using maybe language that you don't necessarily understand. Well, let me tell you, I have felt this in just about every role I've been in. In fact, when I joined my current team, I started hearing the term megamorphic, which I'm still not entirely sure I know the meaning of, but it's been used many times, so I've had to look it up many times. And this is okay. Not knowing something is okay. But it certainly does feel uncomfortable, and it certainly does make me feel like an imposter, like, oh, how did I get here? I don't know what the term megamorphic means, right? And this kind of gets to a bit of a misconception. So we have this idea of like people who get promoted just know everything, and that, maybe when I get to that next level, maybe senior engineer, that I get to have this magical girl transformation, and suddenly I know all the things, and I'm super powerful. In fact, I'm even a little taller, and my hair is luxurious and glorious. And I wish that was the case. Unfortunately, that is not. Plus, I'm already tall, and I don't want to be taller. So the truth is, senior engineers and the people in that next level up, they actually don't know everything. They may seem like they do, but they don't. They may know something more specific in a particular area, but they certainly don't know everything. And in fact, part of moving to that next level is actually the ability to thrive in the unknown. There's many cases where you end up being asked questions where you simply just don't know the answer. And there's actually quite a bit of power in saying, I don't know. This is especially true, something that was pointed out when I got to Google, because it's something that is kind of hammered into us at the start, that like thriving in the unknown is part of the job. So there's constantly going to be this feeling of discomfort. An important clarification here. So when I say feeling uncomfortable, I don't mean put up with that team member's misogyny or allow abusive behavior from so-and-so. That is not the case at all. Uncomfortableness, when I talk about it here, I mean specifically like the scope of the project, the scope of the work itself, and the knowledge, and not at all with the relationships. If you're dealing with those uncomfortable relationships, that's an issue that you should take up the chain. And please do. You don't, as I mentioned earlier, like no one should be going through that. So that's the clarification to keep in mind. So my philosophy is, overall, I try to stay uncomfortable. And this is how I use imposter syndrome as a tool. So when I'm feeling this sense of discomfort, I know I'm still growing. I know there's something to learn. I have, throughout my career, realized at a certain point in the roles that I've been in that I'm not uncomfortable anymore. And that typically means that I'm not learning anything, and that maybe I need to find a bigger pond so that I can surround myself with people that know more so I can continue growing. Now, I say stay uncomfortable unless, like any tool, please use this when it's prudent. No one really likes to be uncomfortable all of the time. It's a lot. It's stress. So there are perfectly valid reasons to stay in that comfort place. Maybe you have something going on with your family and you want to spend more time with them, and there's just no reason to put all of this effort into the whole uncomfortableness at work. If you've got other focuses, you've got a hobby that's like drawing a ton of your attention and bringing you a lot of joy, perfectly valid. So use it when prudent. And when you do that, you can ride that sine wave to new heights. And, you know, we often are looking forward and we are not looking backwards. If we were to look backwards, we would see that this sine wave, that those peaks and troughs are much lower behind us than they are in front of us. And that we have risen beyond what made us uncomfortable before significantly. And I hope you co-sign this strategy. But actually, now I think about it, I think I'm getting off on a pun tangent when I say that. So some last bit of advice before we wrap up here. Some things to just keep in mind as well when looking at moving forward with your career. Be authentic. So people notice authenticity. Be your true self. Bring your full self to work. It may seem silly to say that, but it really shows through, and it's actually a positive thing. So bring it. Be proud of your work. So many times throughout my career, I've made what I consider silly things, but that bring me joy. And what I do in that case is I say, hey, coworker, come over here, check out this thing I made. It's making me smile. Or I'll do a talk. I'll present on something that I've done. There's a big important aspect of that, which is visibility. You did that thing. You deserve credit for it. Showing it off will let others see you for the work that you do and how proud you are, and it draws positivity to you. Number 3 is to have good mentors. I've had many throughout my career, and it can be really huge in how you move your career forward. Also, consider being a mentor. You may not think that you have enough experience or skill to be a mentor, but surprise, you do. There are a lot of people that are coming up in this field that need people to talk to, and you can help guide them. So please consider that. It's a really great thing to give back to the community. Number 4 is really important. So your work is not your life. And some of the worst career advice I've ever been given is, if you're not coding in your free time, you're in the wrong field. And that's just simply not true. It is very rare that a person is willing and has the energy to be able to do the same thing that they do for work all the time. And you're allowed to have a life outside of work. You're allowed to have hobbies, interests, and they're a great way to stave off burnout and keep yourself healthy. And you can't move your career forward if you're burnt out. So do that thing, take that vacation, have fun making that project, and fulfilling all of your hobby dreams. It's important to being a healthy person. And of course, number 5 is to stay uncomfortable in the imposter syndrome sense. That's most of what I have for you today, but before I go, there's just some things I wanted to say. I know that we've just gone through a very long period of difficulty in the world. We're still struggling through it now. So for all of you out there, I just want to remind you that when you're feeling maybe down or you're having a tough time, I just want you to know that you are capable, you are valid, you are important. Please take care of yourself. I want you to know that people care about you. Yes, they do. Yes, you. If you're struggling, please take a screenshot of this slide. All of these resources are available. Please know that you are not alone. Now get out there and crush whatever goals you have. You beautiful, beautiful people. Again, my name is Jessica Janiuk. I'm a senior software engineer at Google. You can find me on these 2 socials. There's other socials too, if you really look for them. And today we talked about imposter syndrome and how you can use that as a tool to get ahead. So thank you very much, and live long and prosper, everybody.